Coming up, Buena Vista Social Club. We talk with cast members Devon T. Moody and Ashley De La Rosa about bringing this legendary story to Broadway. Then we explore more fully the Afro-Latino roots and Black history that profoundly influenced the music and the musical. Hello, I'm Patrick Pacheco. Welcome to Theater All the Moving Parts. As Broadway marks the start of Black History Month, we turn our attention to a story rooted in Afro-Cuban music and the Black diaspora. Buena Vista Social Club tells the story behind one of the most influential albums of all time. Music born in working-class Black Cuban communities, nearly lost to history and rediscovered decades later by the world. The original album went on to win a Grammy, inspire an Oscar-nominated documentary, and spark a global revival of Cuban music, bringing elders who had long been forgotten back onto the world's great stages. The Broadway musical moves between 1950s Havana and the 1990s, tracing lives shaped by art, politics, exile, and resilience, while honoring the African roots of Cuban sound that continue to influence music everywhere. Joining me today are Devon T. Moody, who plays the young Compay Segundo, and Ashley De La Rosa, who portrays Aide Portuondo, two Afro-Latino performers helping bring this remarkable legacy to life. Welcome, bienvenido, Ashley and Devon, to Theater All the Moving Parts, and felicidades on your respective roles in this exuberantly joyful musical. Why do you suppose, Buena Vista Social Club, that audiences have responded so enthusiastically, both Latino audiences and non-Latino audiences?
I really think it's the power of the music being so moving and inspiring, and something that even if you don't understand the language or it's not something that you grew up with, it makes you want to move, it makes you feel something. And I also think the fact that it is multi-generational as well. We see a wide span of audience members coming into our building every single night, and I think it really connects with everyone.
Devon?
I think if you look at how the music, like where the music comes from, if you look at the roots of the music, it spans time, but these are rhythms that came across transatlantic passageway through the Caribbean with European influence, and then with the influence of the Americas. That's 75% of the world right there, that this music has been culturally influenced by. And so that alone is basis for it to be connecting with so many people. You know, and then you have the history, you have the charming characters that come with it, and you have the fact that it kind of wasn't really available to the public. I mean, yes, all of South America knew this music. This music's 80 years old, you know, but it was a global phenomenon once when they played at Carnegie Hall, and it blew up. It's one of the most famous and successful global music albums of all time.
Grammy winning, so millions and millions of copies. The documentary was Oscar nominated, and it just hit like a ton of bricks. One of those charming characters that you're talking about is Compay Segundo, a legendary Compay Segundo
Legendary
that you play.
Compay
You play the
Segundo.
young version of him in his glory days.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That swagger.
Well, I think his whole life was his glory days, because you look at those videos of when he's interviewing at 88 years old, and them things are full of glory. He don't look like he lost a drop of it.
What research did you go into, Devon, to capture him so beautifully?
Well, aside from watching the documentary and every available YouTube video and every article available, I was fortunate enough, and I tell the story all the time, but fortunate enough to have David Oquendo, who is our maestro extraordinaire who plays guitar in the show, in the band. He lived around the corner from Compay Segundo growing up in Cuba. So I kind of had like a secondhand reference and validation.
He's a joker as well. He's the joker of the family.
That I do not identify with.
Ashley, you play Aide, the older sister of Omara Portuundo. Now, we didn't know much about Aide. She's the one that leaves while Omara stays behind. What was the research that you did into her life, or how did you create her with Salim Ali, the director, and Marco Ramirez, the book writer?
Yeah, so like you said, there isn't a ton of information about Aide because she left the spotlight, she left Cuba. So I did what I could online, researching her. I found a little bit about her life. I saw what she, looked like, but then kind of from there, it was really just with the help of Sahim and Marco, like going into the text and really building my version of this character from the inside out. And I drew on a lot of personal references, being one of 4 siblings, being a sister. My father came to this country from the Dominican Republic, so just kind of tapping into and getting curious about his immigrant story and what it's like to leave someone behind for a better life. And when Aide left, she came to New Jersey. And there used to be a line in the show that she was like, no one ever told you what winter meant? And when I was talking to my dad, he came to this country when he was 14 years old in a pair of like corduroy pants and a short sleeve t-shirt, and he came in December, and he was like, it was the worst experience of my life. But to just, that island, that Caribbean boy to be dropped into snow and winter for the first time, and just being able to kind of, those little nuances that maybe are not exactly specific to Aide, but they are now integral to my version of Aide.
Tell us your dad's name.
Francisco de la Rosa. Yes.
You're called upon, although the dialogue is in English, the songs remain in Spanish. What were some of the challenges that presented for you in terms of creating a character, both acting in English and then singing in Spanish, especially that transition?
It's funny because for me, it didn't feel very challenging. I would have liked, if we could do it all in Spanish, that would be amazing, but I obviously understand why we couldn't. But being bilingual myself, it's sort of like, it feels natural and right to, I always say I speak Spanglish, to be switching, and sometimes I'm thinking in Spanish or thinking in English and saying things all mushed up. So it kind of felt like a natural extension of my daily.
What about you?
Though I am multilingual, it was definitely a bit of a struggle in some regards, because I didn't grow up speaking Spanish, but I worked hard to get a level of proficiency that I'm like, yes, I speak Spanish, I'm comfortable wherever I go, understanding, responding. But, kind of going back to it put me in a place of like, I don't know, when you as a Latino who doesn't grow up speaking Spanish, sometimes you kind of feel like you don't belong, or like you're missing something, missing a part of your Latinidad that you should have, when that's not necessarily true, but just culturally, sometimes it's a thing.
Your mother is from Ecuador, yeah?
Ecuador,
Your father's
Guayaquil.
from Georgia. Ashley, there is a term, a Cuban style of music called filín, which Omara specialized in. It's a style of music that is more romantic and more emotional than the traditional bolero. Do you think this is why non-Spanish-speaking audiences can respond so movingly to the music, even though they're not understanding the lyrics?
Yeah, I think it's something that, I wasn't familiar with that term and style of music until we had started rehearsing the show, and we have an amazing pianist, actor extraordinaire. He plays young Ruben. His name is Leonardo Reina. He's from Cuba. And he, in the rehearsal room, was describing filín. And I was like, oh, because I knew the music, that it stirs something, and there are a few, I don't know if it's in our show now, but there were a couple drafts where they referred to Omara as the queen of feeling. And then it was Leo who was like, oh, filín, it's like the style of music. And I was like, oh my gosh, no wonder it's this unexplainable, intangible way of like being in a song and letting it kind of move through you instead of performing a song. And when I would watch videos of Omara, like she's just sitting in her chair singing Dos Gardenias or Veinte Años, and she doesn't have to like move a muscle, and she can bring me to tears.
Tu amor me ha traicionado porque existe otro. Ibrahim Ferrer. Otro querer. Gracias.
What song cuts closest to the bone?
The song that gets me is Dos Gardenias.
Dos gardenias para ti.
And hearing our older Omara, Natalie, or even in our understudy, Sophia, like when I go out there and I have to say the final line and I'm this far apart from Omara when she does her big note, like sometimes it literally brings me to tears and I'm just like, I'm not supposed to be crying right now, but it gets, I wish I could sing that song. Like I wish I want to like do a little duet, but that's the one for me.
There was colorism, obviously, in Cuban culture at this time that the musical is set in. What do you think this musical has to teach us about the African roots of Cuban music, that Afro-Caribbean beat that is so infectious and people love so much?
That what Latinidad is now would not exist without it.
Yeah.
And it's been across the entire world, blackness has constantly been pushed and tried to be erased, but it is inevitable and it is the root of how everything is. And anytime there's something anytime it's replicated or tries to be copied or distilled into something else, it is a shallow, brittle copy of the roots where everything comes from. Latinidad is blackness, hands down. It doesn't exist without it. It's indigenous and it's blackness. Anything that tries to be put on top of it in order to reach or cater to some kind of idealistic, Eurocentric idea of something, no.
As someone who identifies as Afro-Latina, it must be a source of pride for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it, yes, there was colorism in this time, in this show that we talk about, but it still exists to this day, not just in Cuban culture, but in Latin culture all over. And I think that being able to be in a show that celebrates Afro-Latinidad specifically is a great source of pride, even though my character is the one who is, she is the colorist, the most colorist person there. Like she's very prejudiced in trying to separate herself, but I think as a person, originally I was like, oh, it's hard to reckon with because I don't want to be the bad one. But as an actor, it is really rich and meaty to be able to dig into that and also kind of reckon with some things growing up that I felt like were kind of put upon me, and being able to really investigate like my history and the history of blackness in Latin culture.
We should say that the original Buena Vista Social Club was a club for working class blacks as well, and that was a major part of it. It closed in 1959 at the revolution. What was the threat to Castro and the revolutionaries that took over?
Separation and identity and individuality. I mean, as he came over, once Batista was overthrown, his thing was a unified Cuba. And there were a lot of things that he sold to the Cuban people that they ended up believing that he did not
deliver on.
He didn't deliver on. Sorry, I was recognizing some parallels to another administration. But yeah, I think he was just looking for a unified Cuba, and unified meant unified. So anything that gave you an outlet to experience any identity that was not Cuban, based on whoever was the arbiter of what that Cuban identity meant,
Yeah.
couldn't exist.
Ashley, prior to, you've been in Beautiful, you've been in Hamilton, you've been in Mean Girls. Prior to being cast in this, did you think as an Afro-Latina you would have opportunities to express your heritage?
Oh, that's a really good question. You know, not in this way, like not in a way where I got to create my own role. There are, you know, some shows like In the Heights. In the Heights is the one that I would say I've related to the most, being from Washington Heights and being Dominican and Puerto Rican. And I still haven't been in that show. Like, I still haven't been in a production of In the Heights. Hello. But yeah, it's like, you know, you grow up and you think, okay, well, maybe I could do West Side Story or In the Heights, or, you know, you bank on these couple of things. And then I started doing these other, and then Hamilton came along and I was like, I want to be in that one. And yeah, and I think it became for me more about like, oh, I want to be able to be in something that I have fun doing and that makes me happy. And sadly, like the dream of like having this expression, this cultural expression and like level of authenticity that I could bring to my part, it sort of fell away. And so then that's why at the beginning, when I was like, I just want to be in the show, I just want to be in it, I don't care who I am, I could be a tree, like I want to be in it. And it was because I recognized like how rare and special a show like this is.
Devon, how does it feel to make your Broadway debut, Felicidades,
Gracias.
in this show?
I think I can echo a lot of the sentiments that Ashley has just made. I am Black and Latino. Like, my mom is from Ecuador and my dad is Black American. But I am as much Black as I am Latino, and I am a Black Latino. So it kind of feels like, it feels perfect. It feels cool. I feel like, you know, I feel like very fortunate and very proud, and fortunate and lucky was the same thing. But, you know, that I get to do this. You know, I feel like everything that I've done, like, you know, a couple shows before this, and everything kind of just felt like it spilled into the next thing, and, you know, like everything was just kind of working to this point thus far. So
There have been a paucity of Latino-inspired or Latino-themed musicals on Broadway. Are you hopeful that Buena Vista Social Club is going to change that?
I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think it will. I think people are able to see the success of it in all different forms of success, you know, not just financially, but like how it brings people together.
it's an Afro-Latino show, and the first show, all of the music is in Spanish. And also the first show where now we get to be people like us. You know, every show before, West Side Story, In the Heights was kind of like, you kind of have to push the barrier sometimes in order for the next thing to kind of come in and wait, oh, maybe I don't have to distill something as much as I got. Imagine that. I don't have to make something palatable for an audience, and the music can be in Spanish and they're still gonna love it and come back 3, 4, 5, 6 times.
We have to wrap up, but I wanted to ask you how this being in this musical has changed you. How is Ashley before different from Ashley now?
I feel a lot more connected to who I am. I got to discover a lot of things about my Afro-Latinidad, and I also got to really cultivate and nourish a lot of aspects of my Afro-Latinidad, and I just feel like more grown and settled into myself, and I know that this version of me is the version of me that I want to take into this next phase of my life and continue to grow and build upon from there.
It's very affirming and like validating a lot of those ways. You know, not only identity-wise, but, you know, I always joke that every day I feel like I'm, you know, becoming a little bit better musician through osmosis, because these guys are the best that I've ever seen. But, you know, taking into account like the practice that they put into it, and like, oh, you know, this is who we are. This is fully part of you, as much as everything else is. And so, definitely identifying with what Ashley's saying, but also, I think I've been a better musician, better professional. You know, coming into Broadway debut as like, you know, one of the leading players of the show, it's like, oh, you kind of have to step into something and it feels good. Like, and, you know, yeah.
The older Kampai, played by Julio Monge, says at one point in the show, "We don't have oil or gold, but we have beautiful ladies, good coffee, the best cigars, the best rum, and the best music." So if you only had to pick one, and I should add beautiful men as well, or handsome men, rascally men like Kampai, what would you pick?
I would definitely pick the music.
Have to think about that?
It's between the music and the coffee.
The music and the coffee.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. This was as joyful as the musical itself. It was great to get to know you, to know the musical better, and just have a wonderful run, and good luck with it all.
Thank you so much.
Buena suerte.
Yes, we hope to
Gracias.
see everybody there.
When we return, the history behind the music of Buena Vista Social Club. Welcome back. The story of Buena Vista Social Club is part of a much larger cultural history, one shaped by Afro-Latinidad migration and the African roots of Cuban music. To better understand this, we're joined by Dr. Vanessa Valdez, a scholar of Black cultures across the Americas and a leading voice on Afro-Latinidad and diaspora history. Dr. Valdez is a cultural historian whose work explores the artistic traditions of Black communities in the Western Hemisphere. A former professor at CUNY and the author and editor of 8 books, she is now editor of Centro Press at the Center for Puerto Rican Studies at Hunter College. Welcome, Vanessa, and thank you so much for joining us. So pleased you're here.
It is a pleasure and an honor to be in conversation with you.
I'd like to start by just asking you how, if you were as enchanted with Buena Vista Social Club as so many others have been, especially coming with such a rich store of knowledge of Afro-Caribbean history and culture and music.
I adore that musical. I mean, I sat there, I saw it before the Tonys, and I remember thinking to myself, how did they pull this off? Because it is both, yes, absolutely a showcase for the music, a showcase for the culture, but also a very particular window into a historical moment pre-revolution that I think many audience members may not have known about.
How are the Afro rhythms, which the enslaved peoples brought to the island in the 19th century, reflected in the music of Buena Vista Social Club?
I mean, I think in particular, you had the character of Ibrahim at one point invoke the Orisha Ogun. And so that was the moment where you heard those bass rhythms, which again, people may not have heard throughout the music that they were playing, right? They play songs and danzones and boleros, but that was that moment where that very particular moment where they have the spotlight on that character and it opens it up. And I think they did a tremendous job in showcasing, again, both the foundation of the music and then the development of the music into the 20th century.
There are the polyrhythms, of course, that they brought with them along with the instruments. What instruments, Vanessa, did the enslaved peoples bring with them that then became mainstays of Cuban music?
I think all African peoples who were trafficked to the Americas, it's very well known that the drum was the most, that's what they brought with them. And also even the rhythms, you mentioned the polyrhythms, right? And so even when, drums were outlawed in countries throughout the Americas, right? Including Cuba, including the United States, right? And so you have then anyone who's listening even to salsa today, when you hear people doing the clave on their hands, right? That arises when the drum is taken away. And so people make the noises, whether it be on their hands, be it on themselves, right? And so all of that is recognizable. It will be recognizable at the Super Bowl coming up soon. And all of those things in terms of how musicians and how it is open to everyone, right? Those very simple, whether it's the clave, bass line for everybody, you don't have to be a specialist in music to recognize that rhythm and to move to it.
You mentioned a number of times that you began our conversation with mentioning the Orisha and the invocation of the Orisha, which of course comes from the Yoruba tradition, correct me if I'm wrong, which later became Lukume in Cuba. I guess the question that I'm asking is how the sacred traditions and religious traditions that the enslaved peoples brought to Cuba were then translated into, this with the Spanish tradition.
Yeah, so what you see is, and you see hints of this in the musical itself, is the segregation that in Cuban society, right? Again, pre-revolution. And so, of course, the Buena Vista Social Club is a Black social club. And we only know that because Omada's sister says, "Why are you here?" Right? Like, we're supposed to be over there, right? Meaning like an upscale club, right? And so what you have is a secularization of a music, but again, from a tradition that believes that there's no separation between spirit and how one lives. When it comes to these traditional religions, it is a way of life that governs how people move throughout their lives. And so while there is ceremony, these musicians, when they're going to the Buena Vista Social Club, they're not in ceremony, right? They're having a good time. And yet you can always invoke, right? And at least recall. So Omada Putuondo and what she does, she didn't grow up in it, but again, it was a part of Afro-Cuban society, right? Even if you weren't a practitioner of those religions, it's not like it was distant from you in any way. It also infused how people lived. And so her awareness of it, I think, also inflects in how she sings.
What do you hope that audiences today that go to Buena Vista Social Club understand, or perhaps even re-understand or understand more deeply about the African roots of Cuban music and culture?
I hope that they understand that it exists, right? I think a lot of people, they don't know that history, right? Again, in the same way I alluded to, a base of African American R&B music, or lots of Black music, again, throughout this hemisphere, the base of it is African religions. And so what I hope is that audiences take away a curiosity to learn more about what the relationship is between those religions and those traditions and how it infused that culture.
Well, thank you so much for giving us so much inside knowledge of that, and we can take that away from it. And especially now, those who haven't yet seen Buena Vista Social Club, if they hear this program, will be able to take a deeper understanding to it, thanks to you. So I can't thank you enough for joining us. And thank you for joining us. For more stories celebrating Latino artists and the legacy they've built on the Great White Way, be sure to watch our special Latinos on Broadway, a half-hour CUNY TV presentation exploring the past, present, and future of Latino theater. We look forward to bringing you more fascinating conversations with creative talents who live and work only to astonish us. Also available on YouTube. I'm Patrick Pacheco.